In this video we're going to see how you define queries for your App Store app data. Application Craft allows you to manage your data in two ways. Either you have your own backend, in which case you're going to be making AJAX calls using the HTTP request call or SOAP request call, or you can use Application Craft's own internal storage. And this gives you a very easy, powerful way of storing app data and building relational apps. This is described in proper detail in another section in the Learning Center called Data Storage. So let's just concentrate here on how we define a query on some of that app data. So here I've got a simple query set up called CRUD companies. Now, where does this point to get its data? Well, there are two places that any query can get its data from. A connection, that typically means an external database, MySQL, Oracle, Postgres and so on. Or we want to get our data from app storage. So I click on the Apps tab, and here are a list of all of the apps that I've got access to. I've got permissions to pull data from. And here you can see we could get it from other people's shared apps as well. So let's take a quick look at CRUD companies. And there are three entries here. And the first one, basic data, just gives us access to the summary information. So it's the date and time that an instance was created, the instance GUID, and a couple of other basic bits of information. You won't often want to use that. Full data is the one you will want to use more often. This contains all of the individual fields in your app. And I can just drag that across as has already been done here, and you'll see the full data connection appear along with the name of the app in the right-hand column. If I click on Next, here we can see we only have one table, so there's no join that needs to be defined. And then on this particular screen we can specify any values that will be passed into this query for use for filtering. Uncheck the ones you're not going to use. And then in the output column, these are things which will be returned in the query for display in your widgets, whatever you want to do with the returned data. Then CRUD contacts is a little bit more complex. It's exactly the same principle, but in this case we're actually accessing data from two different apps and we're joining them together. Again, check the data storage tutorial in the Learning Center. This explains how to build relational apps. So we have CRUD companies, which we looked at before, and here CRUD contacts. And if I click on Next, you can see we've got two lines with the join fully defined in the second row. The type of join, and then the table that's being joined to the previous one, and what fields that they're being joined on. An alternative to this, if you've got much more complex queries, would be to do something at the database level, but that's beyond the scope of this here. The final thing that I'd like to point out relating to queries is how we deal with complex data inside an app instance or an app record. If I go into, let's just bring this back up, go to apps, and then I take a shared app. I know I've got one of these examples. Where is Julia? Here she is. So if I go to Julia, and here's an example. That one hasn't got anything. Here, this one has. So this one here has got our standard basic and full data as well as assignments, but you'll also notice that there are other tables that we can pull out of this app. There's LB, that probably means list box. GD is a grid. So if you include grids or list boxes, in other words, widgets that store more than one dimension of data, particularly so multi-selecting lists, for instance, or multi-row grids, what you're going to have there is for one particular record that gets submitted, you're going to have potentially 5 selected items from this multi-select list box. Those can't all be stored in a single record, so they're stored relationally. And then each one of those widgets will get its own entry here, and you would then be responsible for doing the join yourself using the instance ID. Again, that's covered better in the app storage section of the Learning Center. So hopefully that gives you a basic idea how to work with app queries.